Welcome back, everyone. Okay, it is patch day. Very exciting. I have finished the patch 6.1 MSQ, so suffice to say, this is going to be a spoilery video. And I'll tell you what, I'm actually pretty excited. Pretty damn excited. There's a lot of things being teased. This is my first experience actually playing a new patch, being up to date with the game, right? And I'm just imagining what it would have felt like to be there in Heaven's Ward patch 3.3. To actually see, or is it 3.4? To see the seeds of Shadowbringers be planted. And I feel like that is happening now. There is so much to talk about with this stage of the MSQ. It was, you know what, actually, it was cozy. More than anything, it was cozy. And it spent the time with the characters. You could say that not the most happened, but no, actually quite a lot happened that's pretty important, and just spending more time in this world with these characters was absolutely lovely. Now, you may notice things look a bit different. Yep, this, I would move the camera, but if I did, I'd probably knock something over. This is actually at my new computer at work, right? So, I mean, yeah. I'm just finished playing, and I can flick the mic on, or the camera on, and go. So you know what, let's just go. And there's so many things to talk about. I have a feeling that a certain character probably should be brought up. I should talk about Xenos, shouldn't I? I don't know if Xenos is back, but he's not really back because he is dead. But I think we've got to talk about all the Void Scent lore here, how it could tie into Xenos and the very obvious, mysterious character that is going on. Maybe first, I should talk a little bit about how we get here, how we get to a stage where we're even contemplating the idea of a Xenos-like character, a Xenos Void Scent perhaps, being involved in the story going forward. So, obviously when we start off, it is just off to adventure, right? You know, going in search of the mystery beneath the bounty. And that's one of the things that I really noticed, actually. Immediately, we are jumping, yes, it's Newfound Adventure, but we're jumping directly in to what Emmett Selk set up for us. I didn't actually think we'd go like that deep in, that straight in, but we absolutely are. Of course, just as a refresher for the end of Endwalker, you know, Emmett Selk, right? Let's see, what does he talk about? Well, Mericidia, the southern continent. Now, we don't go to Mericidia here, but absolutely we get set up. You know, the nations to the south, who of course were allied with, you know, the dragons fighting off Allag invading from the north. Of course, Allag using a humongous army of Void Scent that they could use through, you know, Xandi's throne and the whole pact with the Cloud of Darkness. So that's obviously some history that we get. And of course, the more history is tied to the dragons, then, you know, fantastic. I think FF has some of the best dragons. But then, of course, what Emmett Selk says is, you know, do you know the current state of affairs, the present state of affairs is in Mericidia? No, we do not. I kind of want to know now. And I have a feeling we're going to find out because they're very obviously teasing. So that's one thing that is decently exciting. But there's also the likes of, is it Blind Frost to the north of Othard? So there's that. Who knows what that's going to be. The New World, the South Seas. We don't exactly get that being talked about. But again, that's more things to think about. Most notably, though, of course, is the reflections of the source. And immediately in this stage of the story, we're dealing with the 13th. And it's quite funny, you know, just how much takes us straight back to the Crystal Tower. You know, the Crystal Tower was at a period of time for me where so much of this game was just clicking, you know? I did it right after I had finished, or was it right? You know what, I think it was like just before I hopped into, well, of course, you know, the big event with the ending of ARR. But it's just amazing how much the Crystal Tower has carried through. And even to this day, we are still very much dealing with the ramifications of what we learn in the Crystal Tower. So the 13th, right? The 13th is basically the dark version of the light flood and takeover that we stop in the Shadowbringers expansion. But it's not like there's nothing going on. As we, you know, find out in a few of these scenes. there's obviously stuff going on in the totally void-consumed world. It's not like it's completely, stopped, which of course makes sense. Light is more, portrayed as like stasis and stuff. So I suppose that, does kind of make sense. But nonetheless, it's quite interesting because, obviously we're going to be going there, right? The way that they've built these cutscenes very much looks like that's, geometry of a level they've made. So I've got to assume we're going to be going to the 13th, perhaps even in the next patch. So I suppose 4 months from literally today, which, hey, that's pretty neat. But just going through then. So overall, I will say I quite loved this stage of the MSQ. I think that it was a perfect come down from the crazy heights that we had been to. And what I love is that while I have so much big lore to talk about, while there are so many things that are going through my head right now, the majority of it was a bit more comfy paced, spending time with characters. I think especially good to get some more with Y'shtola because, I think Y'shtola ends up being super popular a lot of the time because, Catgirl, etc. But there are times where it's felt like Y'shtola hasn't got as much, she's got great character work, but not as much character work. So it was nice to actually have some time for that in this MSQ. Definitely wants to get back to Runar, so there you go. And hey, don't we all? It's like any time that they give us a chance to go back to the first, it feels great, right? Even at that, I'm interested to see how all of this is going. The main technology that's being researched is how we can travel. And yes, immediately it's traveling to the 13th, but, which, is the world of darkness that we see at the end of the Crystal Tower. But we're going to use that to go to other places. And that's where Emmett Selk comes in again, because what does he say to us? Well, he says that we'll be amazed by what the civilizations of the other reflections have built, We have absolutely no idea what that could be, but it's pretty exciting. And already I can think of multiple different directions for things to go as I think about future expansions. Now, bear in mind, I have not done Myths of the Realm's first wing yet. I haven't done that, so I don't know if there's any aspects of its story that could factor in here. But Mericidia, that could be a whole thing. I'm not sure if it's in the game and I've just missed it, but in terms of a style and aesthetic, I don't know what Mericidia is, so that could be quite a large opportunity if they were to take it. So that's one pretty exciting thing. I don't think the 13th is going to be somewhere for us to go for an expansion. I think it's probably going to be more somewhere we quest through this stage of the MSQ. But the other reflections, you could quite obviously see an expansion working there. And the brilliant way they've set this up is that these reflections are other places. They're real other places. It's kind of hard for us to travel there, but they're not alternate universes. They're not different timelines. No, they're shards. They all, we all exist within the same reality. There's just, funky stuff going on because of what Vana did. But fundamentally, they are reality. They are really places that we can go. And that means that they don't feel throwaway. Sometimes, let's just say in Star Trek, a character dies in the mirror universe. It doesn't always hit as hard because you're like, well, that's mirror universe, that character, not that character. Well, of course, it's not like that. So all of this has got me very excited for the future. Another thing that I really liked then was the Razat hand time. I thought that, Thavnir was maybe one of the weaker parts of Endwalker, because I think while you were there and, there's a bit of, soak up the culture, see the sights, all of that, but really you're just thinking about, oh shit, the end days. This is going to be really bad. Where's the big fight? What's the big thing I'm doing? So you don't really get to spend as much time. Whereas here, they obviously do have really good, good bits with the satrap and everything. But here, we're just kind of spending time there in a way that I think really works. Vritra works fantastically as a character. I really enjoyed him in Endwalker, and I think he's just getting stronger and stronger and stronger as a character here. So that Vritra and Estinian dynamic, I think, is a really strong one. And also Estinian. It's always nice seeing, that little bit of softy in him, isn't there? Which, is nice. Also nice little callbacks to the Scions all being rich fuckers who don't know how to manage money, which of course does bring me a bit on to Tataru. Tataru is the best. If they were going to do a spin-off game, maybe a Tataru shop sim or a Jesse shop sim, but I don't know. The many Masters of Coin that we've got in FF14 are actually all really fun characters, and I would love some sort of spin-off game, along those lines. I think that would be quite fun. But anyway, to go on to the actual, the plot, stuff like that, how things go. Well, a few, convenient bumpings into people, and then we are going to what lies beneath the bounty. I've got to say, that dungeon, really cool. Now, I was doing it very underslept and in the trust system. And this is where I actually noticed something about the trusts. I'm not going to say that the trusts are better for learning new dungeons, but I suppose in a way I kind of am. Purely because whenever you die in a trust because you've been a stupid dickhead, it resets the fight, you gotta do it again. And it's not like that in a normal dungeon. You can just, be rezzed and then you're fine. So it's quite funny, actually. I find that regular dungeons are less punishing than doing a trust dungeon. So I thought that was an interesting little thing. I mean, mechanics, I'd say, all good, all happy enough. Particularly, though, I really enjoyed the final boss. And this might just be a personal preference thing, but you see whenever they just throw just a funny little mini game gimmick thing into a fight, I just think that's neat. So the whole, you're spinning around, you've got to use WASD to steer away from the spikes, but then he does the big line things, and oh man, because this is so embarrassing. I had tunnel vision doing my combo as Red Mage towards the end of my first attempt on that boss. Only to be bloody hit by the, the silk curtain thing. How stupid. Also, I kind of like that silk curtain mechanic, right? So, all the big things fall down. He will channel into one of them based on the color. That's where the circles of damage are going to come from. Again, it's just that thing with the way they design these mechanics in FF. There's something just quite satisfying about the readability in them. So anyway, I thought that was a really cool dungeon. And then diving into really deeply more into the Vritra backstory really helps flesh him out as a character, right? And I just, all these kind of the more elder dragons, right? It's, I don't know, it's just cool. It helps lend that sense of history, I suppose, to the world. And you really do get that. You're like, oh shit, we're in what, 7th era? You're going through the eras and everything. And, Karat's just like, yeah, 5,000 years ago, here was the big thing that was going on. I don't know if I have much of a point to that. I like backstory, I suppose. Maybe that's the real point here. But it just makes me want to know what's happened in Mericidia since. It seems like they're an interesting bunch, and I basically know nothing about them. For Vritra, though, it's just more things to give him a little bit more depth, right? Get the sort of the wellspring of emotion, I suppose, for that character. That really worked, and it's something they drew to a close perfectly with how the end of this chapter of the MSQ was done. But I was to talk about some other things. I think we need to engage in the more spooky lore here, right? Because shit's coming. Some dangerous shit is coming from the 13th. So the first thing that we see is this kind of reddish portal. And we can't really make out who's coming through it. Immediately at that stage I thought, oh shit, is that Xenos? And then one of the next, meanwhile scenes. We see this sort of Dark Knight character on this throne. And I have to wonder if that's a reference to another FF game. Let me know in the comments if it is. And then we see these elemental thrones that are talking. And they're very much planning to unleash something upon us. That's all looming. And do you know what it is, right? You could say oh, this is just, hey, setting up some mysteries, not that interesting. I think the reason why it's interesting to me is that this is a game that definitely delivers. All right, almost all the time they deliver. So that's why when I see these things, it's my head is so much more primed to engage. There's no cynicism or anything like that at play. Which, you know what, after dealing with some of the stories in another game that I play, it's kind of nice to not be thinking, oh yeah, they clearly did this because, they cut that in the previous expansion and this thing didn't work and then they had to release a book to patch that up. It's just kind of refreshing and I really like that. Now, the thing is, Vritra's sister is there in the 13th. And this is kind of getting me thinking, because whatever these boyos in the 13th are planning, they've been planning it for a long, long time. And they have had, I suppose, limited exposure to our world through any time a void sent is summoned, also through Reapers, Xenos, and then they have, in a way, a bit of a hostage from our world in Vritra's sister. Now, that's kind of interesting. Are they, because if you think about the sorts of beings we're dealing with here from the 13th, I mean, come on, they don't give a shit about time. They're happy to wait, right? So they're evidently just waiting for us to, do something, right? Like a trap to be sprung. I'm not particularly sure, but because Vritra's sister can't just be dead. There's a few ways it could go. Like, she could be totally taken, her soul twisted by darkness, so she could end up like one of those crazed void beings. Or it could be that, yes, the scales of the first brood are very strong and somehow she hasn't been injured, or perhaps time just works a little bit funky, who particularly knows, really. And, she could be there as a prisoner or there as a free agent. But either way, they know she's there. They know we're going to try to come and get her, which basically means that they know that we're going to open something that can be exploited, which would obviously be very rough for the characters of, Vritra and Y'shtola. So I'm not exactly sure how they're going to do that, but certainly big spooky things. Big spooky things that absolutely have me thinking, because, well, I just wonder if there's blind spots that I have, not knowing everything about the 12, not having played 1.0, not having played the Eden Raid series. Because I'm kind of wondering, like, the Eden Raid series, from what I understand, is kind of going into... Oh, words are hard. No, it's not the empty. Oh, like the, completely, like, light destroyed part of the first. And I wonder if there's any insights we could glean from that raid series it could apply to what's going on with the 13th, which, is, of course, just an entire place taken over by, Aether of One Aspect. Now, the other thing then is the Reapers. So the way that the Reaper class works is basically like a contract with the Void Sent and the other side. So the Void Sent, it's kind of like almost operating through the Reaper, from what I understand. And, that can go badly. There are cases where, like, the Reaper gets consumed by the Void Sent. That's obviously a bad thing. They basically lose their soul to the Void Sent or whatever. So if that's the case, then the whatever dark forces we have from the 13th could probably spy on us, learn what's going on, scout things out. But then, of course, there's the character of Xenos. Now, this is where we've got to talk about Yoshi P, because Yoshi P was pretty clear that Xenos went Reaper for a reason. Now, I suppose one of those reasons could be, maybe his own personal journey of hardship and something that we go, back to the Garlean lore of where the Reapers come from. But I think whatever his personal... Well, actually, that's it. I mean, his personal reasons for going Reaper, that's something that's been left a bit of a mystery, right? Like a bit more of a mystery. And Yoshi P was kind of playing coy a little bit with all of this. Oh, he went Reaper for a reason. Now, we've got this, sort of spooky hands in the eyes fella. Which again, I'm wondering if that's an FF reference, because there's something about that kind of seems familiar to me, but I'm not sure. But anyway, what is that? So, trying to think about the Reaper mechanics as much as I can. You've got Xenos making a pact with a Void Sent to become a Reaper. And, it's like literally with a thing that's called a soul crystal. Whenever a Reaper gets overtaken, that's like really bad. Now, what are the ways that this could have went? Because the normal way it would go is, I suppose, well, I guess maybe in as he's dying, this Void Sent that he's almost got this, contract with as a Reaper, is able to take over, is able to slurp some of his essence out. Because that's what you would default to thinking, right? And then I guess to wrap up the MSQ stuff, I think for me, the real highlight was just it was just the simple scenes, really. Stuff like, you know, going to the library with, you know, Graha to find Y'shtola, going around the, you know, the forbidden section, you know, talking with, you know, just getting in there with the various scholars and everything. Just all of those cozy moments where you're spending time with these characters and they're being themselves. You know, they're not being pushed and, you know, super, you know, molded by these, you know, crazy scenarios that they're in. They're just living and breathing. And I think that's what I love about the format of the story. You know, there's barely any fighting in this MSQ. And I'm just thinking, like, what would it be like if this MSQ was a series of 30 mostly click and collect driven quests? Shit wouldn't work. We wouldn't have as many of these cozy moments with the characters. We wouldn't have the thing that sells us in the characters, which is, you know, very often the dialogue. We just wouldn't have as much as that, you know, of that. So it just really landed perfectly for me, to be completely honest with you. Yeah, I'm really excited. I cannot wait. Well, two things. I really can't wait to hop into the Alliance raid. That's going to be super hype because, I mean, come on, there's going to be big lore in there. I really want to check out Crystal Conflict. One of the things I always would have loved to have in WoW was solo queue RPGs. I think that would have been an awesome experience. And while Crystal Conflict is a super different format of game, like, you know, short 5-minute matches, the idea, though, of being able to play that in ranked, maybe go up a few ranks, that just seems like a really cool form of gameplay. So there's cool glams to collect. There's a lot to do. That is my 6.1 MSQ reaction and, you know, preliminary breakdown. I did have a plan a few weeks ago to do a video on basically what's next for FF14. Yeah, I kind of didn't get that done in time, did I? But with what we've got here, I cannot wait to write a video like that. So we can properly parse out all of the potential that is being teased here. So there we go. That's the video. I hope you enjoyed listening to my thoughts anyway. I'd love to hear what you thought about this stage of the MSQ. And other than that, I suppose a tiny bit of self-promo. If you want to check out the video game that we are developing, The Pale Beyond, then you can check that out on Steam. It's not done yet, but you can wishlist it, and that really, really does help us. We are actually going to have a, you know, not to... fuck it, I probably won't get in trouble. You know, there'll be some demo-ish stuff going on within the next, you know, not long-term, not super short-term, but, you know, short-medium term. So there'll be that going on. There's a few exciting things. So there'll be more to share on our game soon enough. And, you know, development's actually been going really well. I should say too much more. I should save those things. But anyway, so I appreciate you. Thank you for dropping by today, and I'll see you next time.